Deuteronomy 6 lays out the greatest commandment for any of us, and that is to love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength.
So Davis sent me an email, and the title was 4 Roles of a Modern Day Male. And that's where we're going. Davis, what do you mean by a modern day male?
Well, I say modern day because men are asking the question right now, what does it mean to be a man? I mean, there's been the question, what is a woman? And a lot of folks don't have the answer to that. But there's definitely been some questions, some lack of confidence, and just men trying to say, well, if I'm not a woman, what does it mean to be a man and a godly man? In today's world and today's culture with all the things pressing against us. But one of the things that I hope we'll discover as we go through this conversation is this is not a new topic. And the things we're going to talk about are not any new discoveries that we've come up with. It's just talking about the things that what makes a man for thousands of years. It's been from the beginning of time when God created male and female. He gave us some things to do. And it's in a lot of ways, it's going to be, what does it mean to be a man 101? Nothing complex here, guys. It's going to be simple. You can follow it. There's only 4 points in this. So you're going to be able to remember this after the podcast. And that's our hope and goal, is that you'll say, you know what? The world may be trying to make this complex and confusing, but it's really pretty simple in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of ways we could organize it. You'll hear the 4 things that we'll talk about today to help you say, okay, here are 4 hats that I wear, 4 roles that I need to assume, and how can I do them well?
I love it. And what I love is it's not really modernity, right? Not much has changed if we observe what God laid out as our roles and what men have done historically. It hasn't changed much. But what is modern is this question of where should I be and what should I be doing, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you real quick, when we're looking at modern men, is this just advice for husbands or fathers? What if we don't necessarily fit into that role? Is this also something that single men can take on?
Absolutely. And that takes us to our very first role, and that is every man is a child of God. And there's a scripture that I want to point out, actually 2 scriptures in this point, that will really carry over into our other 3 roles as a husband, a father, and then a principal and a teacher is the 4th one. And whether or not you're homeschooling, you're falling into that category, you'll find out.
Sure.
But Deuteronomy 6 lays out the greatest commandment for any of us, and that is to love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. So the first thing we need to be thinking of as men is, as a child of God, how do I fall in love with God? What does that look like? Am I in love with God, or do I have some heart conditions that I can't see very well? And I always like to think about the physical condition first, because 1/4 of all heart attacks happen with no symptoms prior to that. And so a lot of men are surprised, a lot of women are surprised if they find themselves widowed because their husband died. And this actually happened. This is a story that's real. When I was 40 years old, I was golfing with some buddies. And the very next day, I got a call from one of the guys in our foursome and said that Chuck had just died mowing his yard last night. 40 years old. And just the day before, we were golfing. We were talking about coaching our kids in baseball and all the family things we're doing. And then suddenly he was gone. Similarly, I think the spiritual condition of our hearts, we could have a heart murmur, we could have a heart condition and think we're actually doing pretty good spiritually when we might have some problems that are coming up that need to be taken care of and paid attention to. And again, it all falls down to, what is our first love? What are we worshiping? And if it's God, we're going in a good direction. But we can fall in love with God more and more every day. We can and we should. And so that's the greatest thing we can do, certainly as a child of God, but even as we look at being a husband, a father, a teacher of our kids, they're going to see, how much do we love God? That's all going to come right back to that, which is the second verse I want to share, and that's Proverbs 4:23. Out of the heart spring all the issues of life. And so, guys, I want to encourage us to get our hearts right. Get our hearts right with God, and every issue, every role we wear, every hat we carry will spring from that. And whether it's good or bad, it's all related to how much are we in love with God, or are we just fooling ourselves?
This episode of Rapid Response was brought to you by CTC Math. Visit them at ctcmath.com today.